Hey folks, Zach Osterman here, IU Insider, Indianapolis Star. This is Mind Your Banners for January 30th, 2026. He's Mike Niziolek. I'm Zach Osterman. This is our first Mind Your Banners since Miami. That is largely down to me being sick, and I apologize for that. At one point, I was struggling to speak because of a swollen tonsil. It has been an adventure since Miami. It's funny because we were talking to you and I, Mike, spent obviously some time around the Alabama press corps, which some people suggest I'm actually secretly a part of, at the Rose Bowl. And I think it might have been Matt Stahl who said, you're going all the way to the CFP national title game, and then you're going to get home and you're going to be sick as a dog for a week. And
yes,
that was a much more accurate prediction than my prediction of the IU-Alabama game. So anyway, I'm sorry it's been so long. It's primarily down to me. Mike is, if you're not watching, he's in a hotel room in lovely Pasadena. The Big Ten schedule makers were nice enough to give him a trip back through one of our many glory era tour stops. He's there for the LA Swing with basketball this week and this weekend, which we will talk about eventually. But we want to start with football today, Mike. Things are finally settling down. The portal is closed. We have all the NFL draft decisions, I think, at this point crossed off. There are, I think if anything, there's going to be some staffing issues. Seems like Chandler Whitmer might be on the move to the NFL. Of course, Indiana's already turned things over at strength and conditioning. But it does seem like, for the first time, there is a collective catching of breath over at the North End Zone facility.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, you kind of come out of it thinking they did pretty good in terms of what they wanted to accomplish. You talk about retention. Fernando was gone no matter what. I felt Pons was too, because he was in a sort of D'Angelo Pons, because he was in sort of a situation where his weaknesses or the question marks around his game were always going to be the question marks around his game. He wasn't going to suddenly grow, 5 inches. And so another year coming back with what he's done, been an All-American every year. There wasn't anything he could prove. And then obviously Omar Cooper, I thought, was sort of the more interesting decision. He decides to go. Indiana had loaded up in the portal at receiver, bringing back Charlie Becker. But you bring back Amari Farrell was kind of earlier. I don't know if we had talked about that or not, but he comes back. Tyreek Tucker, obviously he earned All-American honors too. And then Carter Smith. I mean, that's half of what, I think what happens with teams, in the past with like an Alabama or Georgia, when they had this success, if everybody left, it was hard to sort of, have momentum or kind of kick off and start. I think when you kind of retain half the NFL talent you're bringing back and don't lose really any starters again for a second straight year in the portal. I mean, you lose your backup quarterback. That's probably the biggest, sort of hit you took. How many players was it total? Was it 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 6, I think, scholarship players after the portal entered. That's one of the lower numbers in the Big Ten. So I think when you're talking about in terms of what they wanted to accomplish, you mentioned the coaching staff. Whitmer would be a loss, but I mean, still 9 out of 10 assistants. I mean, you gotta like what this team's doing year to year to retain talents everywhere on the field.
You're not going to keep everyone. Like if you are good, if you are this good, you are going to lose assistants because people are going to want a piece of whatever your formula is. You are going to lose players because guys are going to be good enough to go to the NFL. Indiana went through some of this last year. A little bit more of it was attritional based on graduation and stuff, but Indiana had to replace its quarterbacks coach last year. And we all said, well, they're going and they're hiring this young guy from the NFL and how's he going to adjust and whatever. And then look what happens. I wouldn't even be shocked if Tino Sunseri, if Chandler Whitmer does leave. For people who may not know, he's interviewed with a number of different NFL teams. And I think the noise has been mostly around Tampa Bay for a quarterback's job. Of course, he was in the NFL. What was he, like a assistant passing game coordinator or something like that for the Falcons? So, I mean, he has an NFL background. But, I wouldn't be shocked if Tino Sunseri was one of the people that maybe Curt Cignetti considered to try and bring back. He's got a really good relationship with Cignetti, really good relationship with Mike Shanahan. But the point is, just like when UCLA brought Tino West, not unlike what they've done with you this weekend, Mike, they wanted a piece of what Curt Cignetti and what Mike Shanahan and what Indiana had achieved and had been able to build. And you are going to lose good people when you have this kind of success. I think if I look at this specific round of, sort of turnover, what I like if I'm Indiana, especially compared to last year, and listen, I'm not suggesting Indiana's going to be better than it was a year ago. Like, you're replacing a Heisman Trophy winner. You're coming off a 16-0 season. Like, you can't expect it to be better than that. But
you literally can't do better technically.
Right. Like, all you can do is win the games by more points. Like, that is physically the only. I mean, maybe you could make someone cry on the field. I don't know.
I think that actually, Bert, I don't know.
Yeah, they were wearing helmets. It was hard to tell. But
Illinois,
last year we were sitting here and we were talking about, hey, you're going to get some of these good pieces back. You got some skilled players. You got this. You got that. If I'm Indiana, I like how much I'm retaining around the lines of scrimmage. You're getting both your starting defensive tackles back. You're getting your best, the best edge rusher you could get back, who, if we looked at Daniel Ndukwe right now, the way we looked at like Elijah Hardy, for example, last year, we'd say, hey, he could very well be one of the next real impact players for this Indiana defense. You're getting 2 of those 3 linebackers back. You're getting 4 offensive linemen back to, 3.5 maybe, like however you want to see a Johnny, like, you're getting 3 starters.
I think Johnny counts because they
There's a guy who's clearly breaking into that level. Yeah. Like, if you're Indiana, yes, you've got a lot of skill position talent to replace. I think D'Angelo Pons is a huge loss. Like, just think about how many plays he made, like how many moments D'Angelo Pons had across the last 2 years. But
that was built into the calculus. Like, the difference is Fernando and D'Angelo, they knew clearly because like what they did at cornerback in the portal, they were bringing back also still Jamari Sharp. Like they were protected at the positions where they knew they were going to take a hit. Like, I'm not saying that, like you said, they're not going to be better at corner by losing D'Angelo Pons, but I think they knew it. They had a sense of it, and they attacked the portal saying like, look, we need options here, and they got them because they also, and when you talk about retention, like retaining Ryland Gandy, like he might not win the starting job, but having a legitimate backup, because he stepped in
a year ago, none of us would have thought Jamari Sharp. We would have looked at Amarian Knighton and Ryland Gandy coming in.
It's true
too. These are guys who with meaningful snaps, good PFF grades, whatever, good film.
But I'm saying when you're getting new talent and also retaining the talent that getting sort of pushed isn't leaving, then you're in a good spot. And that's what happened at most of these positions, except with the exception of quarterback.
Yeah. And again, quarterback's also a hard one because
hard one, yeah.
You're only playing one quarterback. And yes, they would have liked to keep Alberto, and Alberto Mendoza was clearly ready for an opportunity to prove, kind of more. And I have heard, as I'm sure you have, the many jokes that if he has a good year at Georgia Tech, Indiana will just call him back up. To be clear, I don't know anything behind that. I don't think that anyone sees the ACC as a AAA league other than possibly myself. I think that, that the other thing is, like, I don't want to say moving on, but there is, and maybe the calendar helps with this too, because like it does just sort of naturally, like, unlike, you think about basketball where the portal stuff's already ongoing, and I know it's going to change now. You spill out a basketball season and then there's kind of nothing. Like, if you don't care about college baseball, there's just nothing going on after the college basketball season ends. You just kind of like, you just sort of move on. Like, it actually is interesting being on the other side of this, of a deep playoff run for the first time. Like, the extent to which it does feel like Indiana, like the off ramp has been kind of comfortable here. Like, they got the celebration. I'm sure they would have liked more people there. You and I were there. It was frigid cold.
Yeah, I saw all the tweets and like people tweeting out the pictures. I was like,
it
would have been important.
I literally could not keep my hand out of my glove for more than 2 minutes at a time trying to take video without losing all feeling in my face.
Like, at a certain age, like if you went to that, you might not have made it. Like, it was that
no. I said this when I've gotten asked about it at different times. Like, I said this when somebody brought it up to me initially, was like, they got the moments. They got them at the Rose Bowl. They got them at the Peach Bowl. They got them in Miami. This fan base got to celebrate and feat and honor this team. Yes, they would have loved a packed house at Memorial Stadium. And, I think the John Mellencamp thing probably works better if everyone's not just like absolutely, frostbitten and all that. But like, there's nothing anyone could do about that. They could not have that celebration in April because all these guys would have gone their own way. and because they had to, and you're just at the mercy of the fact that the season ends in January. You don't have an indoor stadium. I know there were people said put it at Assembly Hall, and the problem is number one, you would have had people outside in the cold longer lining up to get in, and number two, you can't guarantee you're going to have room for all of them. So whereas they probably could have
get left out and get mad because they didn't get to be
right. They probably could have fit the crowd that showed up into Assembly Hall, but what if it had been 5,000 more people?
I think more people would have tried to show up, and then you would have had problems.
That's probably true too. That's a good point. That if you told them it was going to be inside, more people would have tried to come. But it just does feel like there's kind of this certainly I get the sense, and you probably do too, that there is a collective sort of catching of breath right now, around IU athletics, because that was a lot. Just that season was a lot. But that there is kind of this natural off-ramp because you've done the portal, you've done the draft, you have, now that the portal's good and closed, and there's no spring window, and I know Kurt Cignetti would rather have one, but there's no spring window, which means your roster's your roster. Your Rylan Gandys are back, your Caden Turners are back. The guys that maybe you wondered, are those like fringe, second stringers that are going to play 10 meaningful snaps, but they're going to be really meaningful all year. Are we going to have to replace those guys in addition to the top line guys? There is kind of this feeling of, hey, they can just sort of transition into really getting ready for 2026. What did Kurt Cignetti say? He said chapter 3 starts tomorrow.
Yeah, well, it's going to come fast, in terms of spring practice. I mean, 4 weeks away ish in terms of when he usually kind of starts with the presser. And then, I think they had a couple practices before spring break each year. So, I mean,
I don't think I'm guessing it won't start until after spring break this year, between the late end of the season and the fact that they're turning over the strength and conditioning.
It'll just depend on what they want to do, how they want to get the practices in, to be honest, because it's the number and the time, the date you have till when they want to schedule the spring game, which they haven't announced yet. Probably not on the front of their mind the last couple of weeks.
No,
it
will be fascinating to see attendance for that thing, because for forever, and you've attended some spring games here, it is always kind of a are there 1,000 people, or are there 2,000? It will be fascinating to know if will the spring game crowd be bigger than the title celebration crowd? I wouldn't be stunned.
It'll depend. They got to do it on an afternoon. The prime time one was timing was not great.
Yeah.
Getting people to invest in a primetime spring game is not good. Any other football issues that you want to discuss?
I guess the last thing was just anything that grabbed your attention. I mean, I mentioned the thing it did for me was just how much they were able to kind of retain in maybe that area of the field where a year ago we talked about, where does Indiana need to get better? They need to get better at the lines of scrimmage. That's where everyone in this forever, but certainly in this day and age, everyone is trying to stay old. Everyone is trying to stay experienced, but obviously everyone is trying to stay, talented too. You can't just be old for the sake of old. But the two things that struck me were that and what you mentioned, the number of sort of fringe guys that they kept around that if the worst they are is depth pieces, that still puts Indiana in a much better spot than maybe a team where you really front load your roster through the portal or whatever, but the guys behind that. Because we've talked about this the last 2 years. Next year was supposed to be the year that they really felt maybe some of the impact of the roster attrition from the coaching change. That, what they lost in the 22 and the 23 classes was what was really going to maybe eat out some of the sort of thick middle of the roster. But if you've got your Rylan Gandys and your Caden Turners and we can go up and down the list. Those guys may not be starters, but they do provide you with a level of flexibility and depth that a lot of people probably don't enjoy. And I just think that, those were the two things that jumped out to me. I don't know if anything else did to you. I know we've talked about some of the portal players and some of the guys we think might make an impact, but just kind of where things settled out, if there were things that surprised you or seemed really important to you, basically.
Well, I think the offensive line is interesting. Obviously they bring back 4 starters, so the need wasn't necessarily there, and it was probably hard to sort of pitch it as like being a backup. Like not everybody's going to want to be Zen Mikulski, sort of be like a 6-man or possibly, that extra guy. But obviously they have to have some amount of faith in some of the backups that they've got, because they only added one, right? They only added one offensive lineman in the portal total.
Yeah.
And
they lost too. A couple young guys decided to move on.
And so, I think they're at 13 scholarships at the position. So obviously, Bob Bostad and all of his players have talked about how, from Carter Smith to Drew Evans, multiple years with him has really helped, like accelerated their development. So obviously I think they feel good about some of the pieces they have there. They didn't add a ton. I mean, I think it might have been probably hard too, but just in terms of only adding one offensive lineman, like you said, kind of setting up, they've got I think it's like 9 underclassmen going into next year, or sophomores or retro freshmen. So I mean, it's a group that you're probably going to have to start seeing some of those guys step up, or you're going to see bigger portal numbers next year. But I just thought that was kind of notable. I mean, obviously defensive end, they just had to reload completely, almost like you said, bringing back Ndukwe, but nobody else. And when you mentioned the spring portal, we should mention that they hit big in the spring portal both of the last 2 years. Like they got Wyatt and Daly last year. They got Pons and Tyreek Tucker the year before. I mean, they missed a couple in 24 in terms of like guys that they brought in that didn't do anything. But like all 4 of those guys were huge, right? I mean, I know Wyatt only played half the season, but the half was he was the starter before Daly was, right? And so it'll be interesting because it just seemed like Sig evaluated the roster and some things were different than maybe they thought, and they went out and fixed the holes. Can't do that anymore. And they didn't sign a veteran tight end.
Well, they haven't yet anyway, and obviously, you can still.
I mean, in theory, they could add somebody, but like
of course, a lot of the quality is gone.
Sorry,
but would we have looked at Riley Nowakowski? None of us looked at Riley Nowakowski last year and thought, oh, there's a honorable mention, all Big Ten tight end who's going to have a touchdown catch in the Peach Bowl and a touchdown run in the national championship game. I mean, there is a little bit of an element when you look at like Zach Horton, when you look at Riley Nowakowski, to just sort of saying like maybe the position is going to make the player a little bit. But no, to your point, like that initial portal run, it's not like they were even targeting it. I mean, because they went after, they got Nowakowski early, but they also went after Jack Indries, who was the Cal tight end who was so close with Mendoza, wound up at Texas. I think there were a couple others that they really kicked the tires on. Of course, they wound up eventually getting Holden Stays. But like they did not seem to really push the boat out at tight end the way they did some other positions. Certainly not even the way they did a year ago. So like that maybe they do like some of what they have in their young players. Yeah. I don't know.
It's just a more unproven position than they've had probably on the roster over the last 2 years in terms of like nobody with production. Like, can you think of a position that they had like that?
Yeah. No.
I mean, no. So it's like that just stands out in terms of, and like Brock Schott, he's got all the physical talent, so maybe it's just putting it together and they think he'll be ready to hit the ground running because he's built like a college football player like now. Like he doesn't need like more time to get to sort of develop that way. Are you surprised that they did it? I mean, like you said, I guess they could do it still, but like the quarterback situation, I guess we assume Grant Wilson's coming back because he does have eligibility left. And he's sort of the slots in as the backup. But what do you think about the quarterback situation? Obviously we know Hoover's a starter, but like, what did you think about them? I mean, it's a hard sell again, trying to pitch somebody to come in and fight or be a backup. What do you think they did at quarterback?
I would have to think that they will try to get someone. And maybe
just
that's
numbers wise.
Maybe that's a late high school transfer or a high school ad like last year. Maybe it's maybe it's in just another Grant Wilson type quarterback. It's hard for me to imagine them thinking that they're good where they are at quarterback. Maybe there's a little bit more faith in Wilson because it'll be a second year in the system, not his first. But like it would surprise me. And listen, having talked to some people and sort of asked around, I think Indiana would have liked Alberto Mendoza to stay. I think I'm pretty confident in saying they were like willing to compensate him very well for a likely backup quarterback. but that Alberto, Adam Follett, Dan Carell, with a great callback to Adam Follett, some Teddy Shell. We can maybe get Teddy back in the old Indiana 17 jersey. I think Alberto just wanted the opportunity to prove himself as a starter, which when you look at Georgia Tech's situation, he's probably going to be their starter. And it's also a reminder, maybe a little bit, that you can't have a perfect quarterback position right now. We also don't know what Tyler Cherry's status is. There's really been no discussion of him since the injury last year. At this point, it's hard to maybe put too much sort of faith in anything like that.
Even if he came back, like, what can you legitimately?
What can you expect? Right? Yeah.
He didn't take a single rep. I mean, he's coaching.
Yeah,
it's like
he's going to need time. He would need time to kind of find his legs again. And that's pun completely unintended with the injury, but nobody can have a perfect quarterback situation. Indiana's last year was probably about as good as anybody can get.
Well, in the year before too, to be honest. I mean, it was they. Yeah. I mean, like, that wasn't a bad spot. Like, they had.
I still find it hard to believe that they're going to feel like their backup right now is a guy that they brought in specifically to be a third stringer. I don't think that's unfair, and I don't think that's damning.
No, Grant Wilson said they pitched him like, we want you to come in and be like. I mean, I wrote about it.
It's like the old head, basically.
Yeah, like a quarterback veteran in the NFL that they want to bring in to kind of teach. Yeah, Fernando's like, I'm not a rookie, but that's essentially what it was. Like, and he helped because he didn't get practice reps. I mean, you only have a handful of reps, and they go to the Fernando and the backup, and so he was just really focused on kind of like technique and teaching guys, and so that was the pitch. Signetti said from the start they were open and honest with them, but obviously now that changes.
But I think that I guess it's just hard for me to imagine that being the pitch, and then 12 months later, Indiana being super comfortable with that player actually just being one snap away from starting for a team that, let's be fair, is going to expect. And I'm not ready to predict next year's schedule, God knows, but like, for a team that is going to expect to be in the CFP again next year, I don't know if you're there. I wouldn't be shocked if there's.
Well, no, I think the expectation is to get back. Like, I don't think that you lower your expectations that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're there from a depth perspective at quarterback.
I don't know. I mean, Grant Wilson's not without starting experience. So, like, there is that, and he faced Signetti and almost won. So, I mean, like, there was, they did respect his game, and so, like, an experience sort of to Signetti and years in the system are sort of what he values. So, like, I mean, I could see a world, but I just think numbers wise, you got to protect yourself, and so, like, just having another body, it does make some sense, but it's hard now, the timing of it. Like, you probably don't have a ton of options.
It's going to be hard to squeeze a high schooler in, unless it's an after signing day ad, which are, I think, rarer and rarer. And I mean, there's probably another Grant Wilson out there for you in the portal, but then you're just bringing in somebody to replace Grant Wilson, and then Grant Wilson's your number 2. So, I don't know. I wouldn't be shocked if there's maybe one more twist in the tail at quarterback, and I think there's a couple others there. I mean, like, Indiana still seems to be involved in some running back situations. They do have room on the roster. I know you keep the running.
I've got to update that. They were
number, but like, they don't. I mean, they are not without room to add. At least a small handful if they want to, but. It'll be interesting just to kind of see how they navigate the next, maybe, I don't know, 2 to 3 weeks before. I mean, because it's harder and harder to get kids into school at this point, like, just enrolled. But there are ways around that, especially for older players and players who may be coming from, like Fernando Mendoza did last year, a school on a completely different academic calendar. Like, Fernando Mendoza was still taking Cal classes for part of his time in Indiana spring practice because he had to finish up his trimester at Cal before he could transfer over. So, shifting to basketball, I think obviously 2 badly needed wins here. I don't know if you saw Indiana always releases a little bit of footage from the locker room after, like, a win. The way he talked about it, I actually thought Darian DeVries thought the Rutgers win was in some ways just as important as the Purdue win. Like, that this team just needed a night to just bury somebody. They'd lost 4 in a row. It felt like the season was getting away from them. A lot of those games had been ugly. I mean, they only lost one of those games by fewer than 10 points or even fewer than 14 points. And there were maybe some green shoots. Nick Dorne had a good game against Michigan. Tucker DeVries finally kind of got his shot back a little bit. But like that, Indiana needed to go beat up Rutgers to feel good again. And then needed to come home and stack that next to a win against a very good Purdue team. And now, it's going to be a really important second half of the Big Ten season. But now I think the road is much more open again to Indiana making a push to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, but I mean, there's not a ton of runway, and it's not easy. I was looking at the schedule. I think they got like 10 games remaining, 6 quad one opportunities, 5 of them on the road. It's not easy because and their wins right now, like outside of the Purdue game, the
only thing I'd throw back at you is 3 of those 5 are UCLA, USC, or Ohio State, which are quad one wins, but are not necessarily like those are quad one based on where they are in the net. That's quad. That's not necessarily quad one like
material, but UCLA is 12 at home. So I know. I would say that's a challenge.
I think they got to split these 2 in LA. I'm just saying, like there are quad one opportunities in that group. There are quad one opportunities against teams that are probably not NCAA tournament teams.
Sir, my point was going to be when you look at their resume right now, because you do, and this will give you maybe a chance to talk about how glorious they are. You do the Big Ten rankings for Mr. USA Today, and Indiana, the wins that they have right now. You mentioned getting a win against Rutgers. That's not too much to brag about. The bottom of the Big Ten. They've beaten Penn State, they've beaten Washington. They're going to play Northwestern and Oregon, who, Oregon is, I think it's tied for the longest losing streak of Dana Altman's career at the school right now. And then they've got a loss to Minnesota, which might be the only loss. I think one other, those bottom 1, 2, 7 teams, I think only have 2 wins against not each other, and one of them is Indiana. So they need some. My point is they can't just squeak by. I think they need to maybe have a winning record in those quad one win games to feel comfortable come tournament time. But this will give you a chance maybe to talk about.
So to your point, I think first of all for Indiana, these next 4 feel very important. You're going to have 2 quad ones. I think Wisconsin's a quad 2 right now.
Quad 2, yeah.
But Wisconsin is a likely tournament team. So unlike UCLA and USC, where UCLA is probably in the field today, USC is kind of slipping away from it, but you can probably count on that because those are true road games. You can count on those staying quad 1 all year. Wisconsin might be a quad 2, but it's a win over a tournament team, and right now Indiana might have one of those with Purdue. And then you have the Oregon game, which you can't afford to lose to Oregon. They're terrible. 3-1 out of this 4-game stretch for Indiana, I think would be a boon. That would get you to 17-8, which isn't anything crazy to write home about, but it would probably be another quad 1, a quad 2, 4-0 obviously would be the dream. Anything worse than 3-1, and I think you still feel like you're swimming upstream
because you have that stretch of
more difficult stretch at the end.
Is it 3 of 4 against Purdue, Illinois, and those are both on the road, and then Michigan State? It's a weird schedule because you've got the games where you can't afford to lose because they're albatrosses for even playing them, and then you've got the games that are just right now. Purdue, the home court, and DeVries talked extensively, or almost exclusively about the home court after the win. That did make a difference in that game. So you flip that advantage and give it to Purdue. These teams, you feel like that might be a get even game for Purdue. Illinois is playing really well, and Michigan State is just not a good matchup for this team. So it's it's just going to get late early if they start. If you go 2-2 in the next 4 games.
It just feels that's where it feels like the more hay you can make while the sun is shining, relatively speaking, in these next 4, the easier you make those last 6. If Indiana could find its way to winning all 4, which I don't think is unreasonable, I don't think it's likely, but I think it's possible. I don't think that's some fantasy land scenario. Then they're fine. then there, that's 2 more quad ones on the road. That's a win over a tournament team.
Fine. In what way? Like, you think that, like, because, like, remember,
I think at that point they are comfortably bound for the tournament. Not necessarily in, like, they're not locked. They're not sharpied, to use the Seth Davis parlance. But, like, if they win these next 4, because here's the other thing, I have a firm rule against bracketology.
Yeah.
Valentine's Day, but I go look at bracket matrix.
You said Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I know. I was on a lot of antibiotics and steroids, which I still am. I use bracket matrix a lot. Like, if you go look at bracket matrix right now, and Indiana's only in like 29 of like 101 projections. Yeah. They're very much on the bubble. But, like, go look at the mid majors. I mean, like, they're just completely hollowed out. Like, it's like there's, we're talking 2 West Coast teams, 2 Mountain West teams, 1 A10 team, 1 Valley team. Like, these conferences that used to eat up a bunch of like at-large berths, or even, frankly, to a certain extent, that used to threaten the bid thieves and all that stuff like that. We have just, like, eaten the heart out of those conferences with the portal and with the inability of those schools to get quality non-conference games and then win them. It's like they're going to be 9 or 10. I mean, I don't particularly right now see a compelling reason why Ohio State, which is in 90 brackets to Indiana's like 29, should be ahead of Indiana. Indiana's got better metrics and better wins, but, like, it's not worth arguing, and this is why I don't do it until Valentine's Day, because it's not worth arguing on January 30th. But the point is, like, Ohio State's in the field today. Ohio State, whose best win right now is UCLA at home. That's it. So an Ohio State team that has a loss outside the Ken Pom top 100, that lost to Washington, that lost to Pitt. So it just, like,
Indiana will probably have a loss outside the top 100 once Minnesota's all said and done.
Yeah, then that's fine. But my point is, like, the bar is going to be low for some of these high major teams. The mid-major side of the bubble is not.
That's damning with faint praise. Like, everybody else is going to be so bad. They just have to be a little less bad.
First of all, that's life on the bubble. Like, as someone who's covered a lot of Indiana on the bubble, like, life on the bubble is everyone's imperfect. My point is more that.
So do you think they get off?
We're going to look at some of these teams and we're going to say, like, why are there all these SEC teams? Why are there all these mid-pack Big Ten teams? It's because we have just completely hollowed out the mid-major.
But do you think they get off the bubble by, like, comfortably in? What's your prediction? Do you have a prediction for? I mean, you've been so good this year. Do they get off the bubble? Are they a comfortable tournament team, or is it like last year where they have to sweat it out?
I trend toward they have to sweat it out. I did want to talk about, and this is a nice little segue into Nick Dorne's emergence, because I think that, to me, is maybe the biggest X factor for this team. You mentioned. I actually introduced our good friend James Crepia's thought exercise into my rankings this week. I didn't go with the bottom 7. I went with the bottom 5. And I said, will the bottom 5 teams win more than 7 combined games against the top 13 right now at essentially the halfway pulse? So, like, we're giving these teams, like, what, 50 more games. They have 1 win.
Yeah.
The bottom 5 has 1 win in the conference.
You added Minnesota, which is, I think, the 6th one. And I think if you add Washington, it's still only 2 wins.
The thing is, I'm willing to give Minnesota and Washington some credit, because, like, Minnesota's been losing a lot lately, but, like, at least it's been close.
Yeah.
Like, they've lost. I think they've lost like 6 in a row by like 35 combined points or 45 combined points, and
they led at halftime in each of those games.
Washington just keeps going on the road and, like, really acquitting itself well and losing by 9 everywhere if you look at it. But, like, those bottom 5, Oregon, Rutgers, Maryland, Northwestern, and Penn State is just, it is grim. But no, to your question about, like, where do I think Indiana goes? The reason I think Dorne is so important, obviously, it is that he is finally starting to look like at a basic level, it's that he's finally starting to look like the player that we thought Indiana was signing out of Elon. He's got 55 points, I think, in his last 3 games. He's making 45% of his threes in conference play. I thought it was intriguing that he put the ball on the floor a couple times against Purdue. He had that really nice like pump fake drive and finish through traffic. But the thing with Dorne more than anything else is that when we've talked about, even if, I don't expect him to have a conference-only effective field goal percentage of 70.2 at the end of the year. Like, that's not realistic. But the thing with Dorne is that we've talked about this team has to win with offense. Like, this is not a team that can just – they're better defensively than I think I expected them to be, but they can't smother teams defensively. They can't win games just with like withering, undeniable defense. And the trouble that I think emerged when Indiana kind of hit skids offensively, especially in like the Michigan State game, the Iowa game, at least as much of it as I watched, which was admittedly not a ton. The issue is that their 2 primary scorers are also their primary initiators. And so you can't have Lamar Wilkerson and Tucker DeVries hunting their offense when they have to start initiating it for everyone else. And when they're bringing the ball down the floor, which they do a lot, even more so when Tatum Connerway is injured, and it seems like he's working back toward getting healthy or whatever. But when they bring them, that means the defensive attention is on them from the beginning, and they are constantly running the ball through those players trying to find offense. And that means that, think about it obviously didn't work for Penn State, but think about how extreme Penn State went in its defensive game plan to just those 2 guys. That's what an opposing coach felt like he was allowed to do against Indiana, because so much of what Indiana wants to do offensively as a team that frankly needs to win games with offense. If you look at their conference-only KenPom adjusted efficiency numbers, they're 4th in the conference in adjusted offensive efficiency. They're 11th in the conference in adjusted defensive efficiency. They got to win with offense. That made it too easy, in my eyes, to choke off Indiana's offense at the source. Now you have a player that can heat up opponents to the tune of at least maybe 14, 15 points a game that is not looking for his offense there, that is forcing a defense to chase somebody to the corner or to the wing. Dorne is really good at getting out in transition. His release is quick. Again, it seems like he's maybe getting a little bit more comfortable now putting the ball on the floor, trying to explode toward the basket. It's not just more points, though obviously that helps. It is a different kind of offense. It's a different solution to the problem. And I think that is why I look at Nick Dorne, and I think that like if there's a twist in the tail here for Indiana, that might be it.
Well, yes. But it'll be interesting to see what happens when Conway's back, and if he moves back to the bench, can he sustain that momentum? Because obviously he's sort of been the primary guy the last 2 games against Rutgers. In terms of minutes, Conway only played 16, I think, against Rutgers. But also, you run the risk. At some point, you got to have a backup point guard too. I think Enright didn't have a single foul against Purdue for like the 5th time in his career. That's not going to happen every game. And so, I think they do need to get Conway back and kind of get into rhythm, because I think they are a better team, with him on the floor. But what does Dorne do kind of when he moves, when his minutes kind of come down and he's not starting? Can he get hot? Coming off the bench, because that'll be a challenge for sort of DeVries to sort of mix and match. But you're going to face teams like UCLA is interesting. Like, they're just really good perimeter defensive team. They're holding teams to under 30% 3-point shooting. I think it ranked like 21st in Division I. That sort of speaks. It's a different strategy than just taking out one player. They just guard the perimeter well. And so how will Indiana match up? And that's why I think this one is kind of a tough matchup for them. I think you picked them Indiana by a little bit. But I'll be interested to see in Indiana, outside the Rutgers game, the road hasn't been kind to them. And so I think that it'll be interesting to see what kind of energy they have for this one. Can they put together a good second half on the road against a team that's going to be a little more competitive than a Rutgers?
Because ultimately, if they are going to make this run that we're talking about, to at least just get to the tournament without like sweating Dayton or something, which man, oh man, I don't know if I'm prepared for Dayton at this point. But like, if they are going to make the kind of push that we're talking about, like they have to get some work done away from home. And that doesn't have to be Illinois or Purdue, though obviously either one of those would be worth its weight in gold. But like if they could win 2 of 3 of USC, UCLA, Ohio State, that's maybe a win over a tournament team, and that's certainly 2 quad 1 wins. And quad 1 wins on the road are so much more valuable than quad 1 wins at home. The Purdue win was fine. I'm not taking anything away. They played well. They deserved to win. They were the better team. And it frankly, like it changed some of my opinions of what this team maybe is going to be capable of these last 10 games, that they were able to kind of really impose their strengths and their game plan on Purdue. I thought they got Purdue out of sorts. Frankly, Purdue was a little bit lucky that they didn't kind of salt that game away, and Purdue's a good team too. They kind of pushed back, but I just like they've got to show they can do something on the road. If they, and that's why I think this, we've talked about, well, this is the next 4 games, the next 6 games, whatever. Honestly, like this 2-game stretch to me is a fascinating window into what this team is going to be capable of putting together for the last 10 games of this season, because I think they can win both. I think they can lose both. Like I wouldn't look at either of these and say like I'm confident for sure Indiana's going to win. I'm confident for sure the result either way. But you are kind of in this situation where, the season is almost broken up now into 4 manageable games, 2 really difficult road games, and then 4 manageable games. I know you mentioned they're not a great matchup with Michigan State, but like Indiana, Michigan State in Bloomington is still going to be a difficult game for Tom Izzo. Like it always is. So like they've got to show something. To their credit, they have these last 2 games. Like, I mean, it's worth pointing out, like, they buried Rutgers. I mean, really buried them. And that's a Rutgers team that only lost by 6 at Iowa. That took Michigan State to overtime. Like, they're not great.
You just don't say they're not going to beat a team outside the top 5. You can't give them then credit for like this team. On second thought, this team,
Rutgers lost bad to Indiana and turned around and should have beaten Michigan State. So the point is, and here's the other thing. I've also watched Indiana get Rutgers by some bad Rutgers teams in that building. Like for them to go there and win the way they won, and then to backstop that with Purdue, that tells you there is at least life, I think, in this team. There is breath.
No, I agree, but I'll just say
these next 2, to me, are really important because it's like you've got to prove to what you said that you can go on the road, you can put together a 40-minute performance, and in particular, a second 20-minute performance that's worth something, in a game against the kind of team that changes your NCAA tournament math.
Yeah, because it's a very narrow. I think they just with the non-conference schedule they played, with sort of losing to Minnesota at the start. It's a narrower path than you'd want. Like, I mean, if you had beaten Louisville or Kentucky, then the math becomes easier. Like you said, it's just, and you've got these. The way they play on the road, they need to, like you said, show you something, because they did that against Purdue about what their higher ceiling is or higher floor. I don't know how you want to say it. That they haven't done that on the road yet, and this is an opportunity against 2 teams that you've mentioned. Yes, I think UCLA is maybe the harder matchup, but I still think they can win that game. It's still a winnable game with not a team that's just head and shoulders more talented. So you've got to be able to get some work done here. Like if they lost both games, like they'd be done, right? Like I mean, you can't. This is, and I mean, you can't put all all the pressure on them, but I do think there has to be some urgency.
It would be more. It would just be hard to convince yourself if they lost both of these games that they would be capable of doing what they needed to in the other 8 remaining.
Right. Going on the road at Illinois and Purdue and winning.
It's not that it would be over. It's that you would feel like if they can't win at least one of these 2, then they are not going to be capable of stacking together enough wins. And listen, a lot of what's keeping them afloat, the metrics are still good. Like they're 31 in KenPom. I think they're in the high 30s in the net. Bart Torvik had them in the 20s. Like the metrics still really like this team. It's the other side of it is they just need some quality. And I would encourage people, go look at the bubble. Like the bubble is going to be incredibly high major this year because we have just completely carved away so much of like the mid and even like the high. I mean, the Big East might have like 3 teams. Like UConn is still there. Everyone knows UConn is there. Villanova's been better this year. But like, I mean, seriously, it might just be UConn, St. John's, and Villanova out of the Big East. Like there's a very real chance that's it. Maybe Seton Hall. Like Seton Hall is going to be floating around in that bubble conversation too. But the bottom of that league is awful. They got 6 teams that are 60th or worse. No, excuse me, 7 teams that are 60th or worse in KenPom. Seton Hall is 49, so they're hardly that great. Like it's just, I mean, it's, you know, you got Ed Cooley being like, we're blessed to be 1-6 in the conference. People have it so much worse than us. Like it's a grim scene, basically. Outside the Big Four conferences, it is a grim scene in college basketball right now. And so the road is wider. The road is more open to a team with maybe a resume that, you know, a couple years ago might not have looked so convincing to pull into something like this, but we'll see. Any other business? How warm is Pasadena?
I don't know. We'll see. I haven't gone out today. We started this at like 9:30.
Is it 9:30? No, come on. Stop it. First of all, your body clock is still in Eastern time. Second of all, don't act like
no, it's not. I adjusted immediately because my travel day was miserable. So like I was already in.
That is not how your circadian rhythms work, but that's fine. I just hope you don't get flooded out like we did last time. Go back to that bowling alley. That was fun.
Maybe.
He's Mike Niziolek. I'm Zach Osterman. This is Mind Your Banners for January 30th, 2026. I promise we won't take 9 days or 10 days or whatever it was to do another one. I imagine we'll have a lot more to talk about in the near future. But for now, for the Indianapolis Star, for the Bloomington Herald Times, thank you all so much for watching, for listening wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, please, to like and subscribe on the YouTube channel. That thing has exploded recently. We've busted well past 2,000 subscribers. We're over 100 million views, or not 100 million, over 1 million views. That's what I was trying to say.
That sounded much less impressive after 100 million. We are over 100,000.
There's 100 million views, adjusted for some decimal places. But seriously, you know, that's continued growing. So please keep following us over there as well. And we'll be back to talk to you soon.